Recognize our first witness, Mr. Kontorovich. Please turn on your microphone before speaking, and you're recognized for 5 minutes. Mr. Kontorovich, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman King, Ranking Member Cohen, Ranking Member of the Committee Conyers, and honorable members of the committee. It's a great pleasure to be here today to discuss these matters with you. I'll state one thing for the record. I have the pleasure to say that we are now the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law, and our generous donor would be happy to hear me say that, I hope. So the executive, nobody would dispute, has vast discretion in foreign affairs. Discretion imparted both by the Constitution, which gives the executive a primary role in the conduct of foreign affairs because of the greater capacity of a single individual to enter into negotiations and conduct dealings with foreign countries, and also because Congress, on top of that already broad discretion, has given the executive vast leeway through statutes that allow for waivers and many other delegations of broad authority. However, Congress also has constitutional powers, core Article I powers, including the foreign commerce power, spending power, which can greatly affect foreign affairs. And when these powers are exercised in the realm of foreign affairs, they are no less valid and no less plenipotentiary because they involve diplomacy or matters involving other countries. Now, indeed, because the executive's power in foreign affairs is so broad, it's hard for the executive to overreach. It's hard. But that makes it all the more amazing and all the more worrisome when the executive does indeed overreach. Because when one has vast power, claiming even more is even more problematic. And I'm going to briefly mention two recent examples of what I see as such overreach involving two core Article I powers of Congress, the foreign commerce power involving the Iran Sanctions Act, and the spending power involving funding to certain United Nations agencies. As Chairman Goodlatte mentioned, the Iran Sanctions Review Act requires that the President transmit, as a condition for the sanctions relief that the Act enables, that the President transmit the entire agreement. The language of this provision in the Iran Review Act is extraordinarily vast, and it looks like it was written by teams of redundant lawyers. And it bears quoting again. These agreements include appendices, annexes, codicils, side agreements, implementing materials, documents, that's one broad category. So the question is this a document? Guidance, technical or other understandings, and lots of other stuff. The question is, are there relevant materials involving arrangements between the International Atomic Energy Agency and Iran for inspection and review of their nuclear program? Is that a document, material, codicil, and so forth under the deal? And it seems quite clear that it is. It's actually mentioned and incorporated by reference in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action itself. And as such, it must be transmitted to Congress for the review period under the Act to begin. If that review period does not begin, sanctions cannot be lifted. It is true, as Ranking Member Conyers pointed out, that prior statutory sanctions had waiver provisions. But just as Congress can allow the President to waive, it can cabin and take back that waiver authority, which is exactly what happened in the Iran Nuclear Sanctions Review Act. As a result, the current lifting of sanctions is legally problematic, and even more troubling is the executive's apparent desire to leverage this to now intimidate states into abandoning their lawful sanctions, which again, the Iran Nuclear Review Act would prohibit. Now, a separate law involves Congress's exercise of its spending power. Congress can, through the power of the purse, deal with any subject involving diplomacy, involving war, as the chairman mentioned. And Congress provided that when UN agencies try to take sides in the Middle East conflict and improperly admit the Palestinian Authority as a member state, despite it not meeting the international criteria for statehood, those agencies can't be funded by the U.S. taxpayer. That law is quite clear, and it applies to any UN-affiliated agency. One such agency, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Control, has accepted the Palestinians as members. The clear effect must be that they cannot receive taxpayer funding. The executive seems to take the position that he will nonetheless send a check to this agency on the theory that the Framework Convention is a treaty. Now, it's true it's a treaty, but it's also an agency created by that treaty. And I think the best proof of that is a treaty can't deposit a check. Only a UN agency can deposit a check. So I presume the money from the Treasury isn't being sent to the treaty, it's being sent to the UN agency, and that's exactly what the law prohibits. Thank you, and I would refer the committee to my written testimony for further elaboration.